Ethan had always thought space travel was exciting, but nothing had prepared him for this day. He stood in the grand hall of Teleth's central palace, staring at the glowing crystal chandeliers and the elegant, flowing shapes of alien architecture. Around him, Telethians of all shapes and sizes mingled gracefully, their voices creating a melody of sounds that no human had ever heard before. And at the center of it all stood Zira, his alien partner, looking radiant in a gown that shimmered like liquid starlight. It had been a whirlwind of events. Just a few weeks ago, Ethan had been exploring the outer rings of the Andromeda system, scanning uncharted planets and dodging asteroid fields. He never imagined that a simple communication mission would lead to a wedding with a Telethian noble. Yet here he was, dressed in a formal human suit that felt both strange and tight, trying to fit into a world far beyond Earth's familiar laws. The ceremony had gone smoothly. Zira had been elegant, charming, and kind, guiding him through every step. Ethan had even learned some Telethian phrases to respond politely, and though his accent was all wrong, it had earned him smiles. He had thought that after the wedding he could finally relax and enjoy the celebration. But as Zira reached for his hand, a sudden hush fell over the hall. A figure glided forward, their robes shimmering with a soft blue light. The Telethian crowd parted respectfully. Ethan noticed the insignia on the official's chest, a symbol of the Galactic Law Council, the highest authority in interplanetary law. "Attention," the official announced, their voice calm but commanding. "By Galactic Law 4719, Section 3, the human groom must also enter into marriage with the family heir of his Telethian partner. This is required to complete the legal obligations of interspecies union." Ethan blinked. He felt like the floor had disappeared beneath him. "Wait, what?" he muttered. Zira's cheeks flushed a light violet, a Telethian sign of embarrassment. She squeezed his hand gently. "Ethan, I'm sorry. I should have told you earlier. This is part of Telethian custom, and the law enforces it strictly. Our family has a designated heir. You must travel to meet them to complete the formalities." Ethan's mind spun. A second marriage? With another alien? He wanted to ask questions to argue, but the official's gaze was firm and the crowd was waiting. There was no room for debate. "So, this is mandatory?" he asked cautiously. "Yes," Zira said softly. "It's a centuries-old law. The union strengthens family bonds and ensures alliances between noble families. I know it seems strange, but it is part of my world." Ethan swallowed hard. "Okay. I guess I don't have a choice." He tried to smile, though his mind raced. He had been prepared for alien customs, for strange foods and bizarre ceremonies, but this was different. It challenged everything he knew about marriage. Zira noticed his unease and leaned closer. "I'll be with you every step. You're not alone." That small reassurance calmed him a little. If Zira could guide him through the nuances of Telethian culture, maybe he could survive this too. The official handed them a small, glowing tablet. "You must travel to Luthora, the homeworld of the family heir. Arrival is required within 3 Telethian days. Delay may result in penalties under galactic law." Ethan nodded, taking the tablet carefully. He glanced at Zira. 3 days. Okay. Let's do it." Later that evening, as they prepared for departure, Ethan had a moment alone to observe the palace. The walls shimmered with light, and in the distance he could see the sprawling city with floating towers and gardens that glowed in soft pastel colors. It was breathtaking, unlike anything he had ever seen on Earth. Even in his shock, he felt a spark of excitement. When he returned to Zira, she had already packed for the journey. Her ship, sleek and silver, waited outside, its engines humming, softly like a living creature. Ethan stepped aboard, feeling a thrill of adventure. He was traveling to another planet, another culture, to fulfill a law he barely understood. And somehow, it felt human. Humans had always faced the unknown, and now he was doing it again. The journey through space was quieter than Ethan expected. He stared at the stars, thinking about Earth, his family, and how far he had come. Zira explained the routes they were taking, pointing out nebulae and clusters of asteroids. He was fascinated by how easily she navigated the galaxy, how natural it was for her to travel between worlds. After a while, Zira turned to him with a small smile. "Ethan, I want you to remember something. The laws of my world may seem strict, but they are not meant to harm. They are about respect, trust, and unity. Humans may not always understand, but you have qualities my people admire. Your courage, your creativity, your empathy. These are your strengths." Ethan felt warmth at her words. "I hope I don't mess this up," he admitted, his voice quiet. "You won't," Zira said confidently. "Just be yourself. That is enough." Hours passed as they traveled through star fields and past glowing planets. Ethan marveled at the views, feeling both nervous and excited. The thought of meeting the family heir loomed in his mind, but he reminded himself that he had survived stranger situations before. He had faced unknown planets, alien technology, and dangerous conditions. Surely he could meet one alien heir without disaster. Finally, Zira signaled a descent. Ethan looked out the viewport and saw a planet bathed in soft blue and green light, with massive crystal forests stretching across the horizon. The atmosphere shimmered like a mirage, and rivers of glowing liquid snaked through valleys. This was Luthora, home of the family heir, and soon it would be the place where his understanding of marriage, law, and family would be tested. As the ship landed smoothly on a platform carved from crystal, Ethan felt a mixture of fear and anticipation. He turned to Zira. "Here we go," he said, taking a deep breath. Zira smiled, her eyes full of encouragement. "Together, Ethan. We face this together." And with that, the doors opened, revealing a world that was beautiful, strange, and filled with possibilities. The adventure of galactic law had only just begun. The crystal platform under the ship glowed faintly as Ethan and Zira stepped out into the open air of Luthora. The world was unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. The sky shimmered with hues of teal and silver, and tall crystal trees rose into the heavens, their branches glowing softly. Rivers of luminous water wound through valleys, casting gentle reflections that made the whole land sparkle like a dream. Ethan took a deep breath, even though the air was filtered through his helmet. "This place, it looks alive," he whispered. Zira smiled. "Luthora is called the living planet. The forests here have been growing for millions of years. My family heir was raised in this world. You will see why it shapes their spirit." Ethan nodded, though he still felt nervous. Meeting Zira's heir meant stepping into more unknown customs, more rules. But a part of him also felt a surge of wonder. He had come all this way from Earth, from the familiar oceans and skies of home, to stand here on a planet that felt like it had been painted by dreams. The two of them boarded a small hovercraft waiting near the platform. It glided silently over the glowing rivers and under arching bridges of crystal. As they traveled, Ethan stared in awe at the structures around them. Buildings on Luthora were not built, but grown. Towering crystals had been shaped into halls and homes, their surfaces shining with natural patterns of light. Everything felt alive and peaceful. "Your world is beautiful," Ethan said honestly. Zira's eyes softened. "It is not my world. It is Layara's, the heir you must meet. But yes, Luthora is special. My people believe the crystals here hold memory. Every glow you see is part of the planet's story." Ethan thought about that. On Earth, humans had books, monuments, and paintings to remember history. Here, the land itself remembered. He wondered if the planet would remember him one day. The hovercraft carried them to a large courtyard where more Talithians waited. They bowed politely to Zira, then glanced at Ethan with curiosity. He noticed their eyes lingered on him, as though humans were rare here. He straightened his shoulders, reminding himself that he was a guest, not an intruder. Inside the courtyard, tall arches led into a glowing hall. The walls pulsed faintly with light, and Ethan felt the air hum with energy. At the far end stood a figure dressed in flowing silver robes. Their posture was calm but strong, their presence commanding yet gentle. "Ethan," Zyra whispered. "This is Liara, the heir of my family." Ethan swallowed hard. This was the moment. Liara stepped forward, their expression welcoming. "So you are the human my cousin has chosen. I have read of your people, but to meet one in person is rare." Ethan bowed slightly, unsure if that was correct, but hoping it showed respect. "It's an honor to meet you. I'm still learning about your customs." Liara's lips curved in a small smile. "Respect is the beginning of learning. That is enough for now." The conversation continued as they sat together. Liara explained the meaning of the law Ethan had heard about. In Talithian culture, a family heir was not only a leader of property and tradition, but also a bridge between generations. By law, any interspecies marriage involving a noble required the heir's involvement to strengthen alliances and ensure stability. Ethan listened, carefully though his thoughts spun. On Earth, marriage was about two people, about love and choice. Here it was about families, law, and responsibility. Still, as Liara spoke, he began to understand that it was not about control, but about connection. "I admit," Ethan said honestly, "this is very different from human traditions. At first I felt confused, maybe even overwhelmed, but I can see there is meaning here." Liara nodded approvingly. "That is the mark of wisdom. You do not reject what you do not know. You listen. That is why you may succeed where others might fail." For the first time since the official announced the law, Ethan felt a small weight lift from his chest. Maybe this was not a trap. Maybe it was a path. The next day, Zyra and Ethan were invited to travel deeper into Luthora's lands with Liara. They used a floating skimmer, gliding over crystal lakes and through forests that glowed like lanterns in the twilight. Ethan felt as though he was inside a dream, surrounded by colors too bright and too soft to describe. During the journey, they encountered a challenge. A sudden wave of crystal dust storms swept across their path, blinding their vision. The skimmer struggled to keep steady, and the guides panicked. Ethan remembered his training back on Earth, how he had learned to pilot craft through asteroid fields. He quickly took the controls, using instinct and human problem-solving. Instead of fighting the storm, he angled the craft to ride its currents, guiding them safely through. When the storm cleared, the Talithians looked at him in surprise. Zyra's eyes shone with pride. Liara gave him a nod of respect. "You see," Liara said, "humans may lack our ancient traditions, but you have your own gifts, creativity, adaptability. This is why the galaxy watches your kind with interest." Ethan felt his chest warm with pride. He had not just survived, he had proven something important. As they reached their destination, a vast open valley filled with glowing crystal pillars, Liara explained that the next step would be trials to test their unity. Ethan listened, his heart beating faster. He did not know what these trials would be, but he understood now that they were not about punishment. They were about trust. That night, as the stars of Luthora shone overhead, Ethan sat quietly with Zyra. "Do you think I can really do this?" he asked softly. Zyra rested her hand on his. "Ethan, humans have always done the impossible. You crossed the stars to be here. You faced storms with courage, and you faced laws you did not understand with patience. That is enough. Whatever comes next, we will face it together." Ethan looked up at the glowing sky. He thought of Earth, of the oceans and mountains he had left behind. He thought of Zyra's kindness, Liara's wisdom, and the beauty of the world around him. For the first time he felt that maybe, just maybe, he belonged here. The journey across the stars was not just about reaching Luthora, it was about reaching a new understanding, and soon, the trials would begin. The valley of glowing crystal pillars stretched wide under the silver sky. Ethan stood between Zyra and Liara, his heart beating fast. He had traveled across the stars, survived a storm, and now the real challenge was ahead, meeting the heir, not just as a guest but as someone who must share in Talithian law. Liara led them into a hall built from a giant crystal dome. Inside, the walls shone with patterns of light that moved slowly like waves. Ethan could hear faint humming, almost as if the building itself was alive. Around them, members of Liara's council sat quietly, observing. Their eyes rested on Ethan, curious and serious at the same time. "This is the human who has joined. My cousin," Liara announced calmly. "By law, he must also form a bond with me as heir. But before such a bond is sealed, he must show understanding and respect for our traditions." Ethan swallowed, feeling every gaze upon him. He wanted to speak, but he didn't know the right words. Zyra touched his arm gently, a silent reminder that he was not alone. One of the council members, tall and robed in deep blue, stepped forward. "Human, you may not know our ways, but your heart can show truth. Speak to us. Why do you accept this law?" Ethan took a deep breath. His first instinct was to say, "Because I have no choice," but he remembered Zyra's words. Respect was the beginning of learning. He steadied himself. "I am from Earth," Ethan began slowly, choosing simple words. "On my planet, marriage is different. It is usually between two people only. When I first heard your law, I felt confused. I even felt scared. But now, after traveling here, after seeing your world, I understand more. Your law is not about taking freedom. It is about joining families, making trust, and keeping peace. That is why I will try to accept it." The hall was silent for a moment. Then the blue-robed council member nodded slightly. "Honest words. Honesty is a strength." Liara stepped closer to Ethan. Their gaze was calm, but their presence was powerful. "Ethan, you may not yet know me, but we will share duties if this bond is made. To stand beside a Talithian heir is no small task. Tell me, what will you give to this family, to this union?" Ethan hesitated. What could a single human give to a family of aliens with such wisdom and power? Then he remembered the storm, and how his quick human instincts had guided them safely. "I cannot give crystals," Ethan said slowly. "I cannot give long history. But I can give human things, creativity, problem solving, a new way of looking at challenges. If I do not know the answer, I will find one. That is what humans do. That is what I can give." Liara studied him for a long moment. Then, to Ethan's relief, their expression softened. "A fair promise. Perhaps that is enough." The council agreed that Ethan would stay in Luthora for several days to learn more of their customs before the bond could be formalized. During this time, Liara invited Ethan and Zyra into their home, a graceful dwelling of crystal arches and glowing gardens. Over the next days, Ethan experienced Luthora's culture. He joined in shared meals, where crystal fruits released soft light when cut open, and drinks shimmered like liquid stars. He listened to songs sung by groups of Talithians, their voices blending with the natural hum of the crystals. He learned how each family kept memory stones, glowing crystals that recorded important moments of life. At first, Ethan made mistakes. He picked up food with the wrong hand during a meal. He sat in the wrong place in the circle one evening. Some of the council frowned, and Ethan felt embarrassed. But instead of giving up, he asked questions. He listened carefully. Each mistake became a lesson. Slowly, the frowns turned to quiet approval. One evening, Liara invited Ethan to walk through the crystal gardens. The air glowed faintly, and the trees hummed softly, as though the planet was singing. "You are learning quickly," Liara said. Ethan smiled a little. "I'm trying. I don't want to fail Zyra, or you, or your people." Liara studied him. "When I first heard of you, I wondered why Zyra chose a human. Your kind is young in the galaxy. You lack the long wisdom of older species. But now, I see why. You may lack age, but you do not lack spirit." Ethan felt warmth at the words. "Thank you," he said quietly. But the true test came the next morning. A ceremony had been planned to test Ethan's adaptability. The council gathered in a circle with Ethan, Zyra, and Liara standing in the center. A glowing orb floated above them, casting shifting lights. "This is the orb of choice," explained one council member. "Each of you must speak a truth into the orb. If the truths align, the orb will shine bright. If not, it will dim. This is how we see if unity is possible." Zira went first. "I will protect my family no matter the cost. That is my truth." The orb pulsed with soft light. Liara spoke next. "I will guide our family with wisdom and fairness. That is my truth." The orb glowed brighter. Then it was Ethan's turn. He felt the weight of their eyes again. His mind raced. What was his truth? Slowly he spoke. "I am human. I do not know all your ways, but I will not run from challenges. I will face them with courage. That is my truth." The orb glowed so brightly that the hall filled with golden light. Gasps echoed around them. The council members exchanged looks of surprise. "The orb accepts," said the blue-robed member with awe. "The bond of unity is possible." Relief washed through Ethan. Zira squeezed his hand, and Liara gave him a nod of respect. He had passed the test, not by pretending to be someone else, but by being honest about who he was. That night the palace held a small celebration. There were songs, light displays, and the sharing of crystal fruit. Ethan felt more welcome than ever before. Yet deep inside, he knew this was only the beginning. The law had brought him here, but now the trials of trust and cooperation awaited. He would have to prove not only his honesty but also his strength, creativity, and heart. As he lay down to rest in the glowing guest chamber, Ethan looked up at the crystal ceiling, which reflected the stars. He whispered to himself, "I can do this. I'm human, and that means more than I thought." The journey with Zira and Liara had only just begun. The morning sun rose gently over the glowing forest of Luthora. The sky was painted silver and blue, and the air hummed with the soft sound of crystals. Ethan stood in the courtyard of Liara's palace, his hands clenched nervously. Today was the beginning of the trials. The council had declared that Ethan, Zira, and Liara must face 3 trials together, tests of trust, intelligence, and cooperation. Only by passing these could their bond be sealed under galactic law. Ethan looked at Zira and Liara beside him. Zira gave him a warm smile of encouragement. Liara's expression was calm, but there was a spark of curiosity in their eyes, as if they wanted to see how a human would perform. "The trials are not about strength alone," Liara explained as they entered the Hall of Challenges. "They are about unity. If we cannot act as one, the law will not recognize us." Ethan nodded, though his heart pounded. "Then we'll have to work together." The first trial awaited them in a vast chamber shaped like a maze. The walls were made of shimmering crystal, shifting slowly as if alive. At the far end, a glowing pillar marked the exit. A council member spoke. "This is the maze of trust. Each path changes and illusions will confuse your eyes. Alone, you will be lost. Together, you will find the way." The door opened and the 3 stepped inside. At once the walls glimmered and shifted, forming endless corridors. Strange lights flickered, creating false doors and misleading paths. Ethan frowned. "This is impossible. It keeps changing." Zira touched the walls carefully. "The maze listens to us, it responds to doubt. If we lose trust, it grows longer. If we trust each other, it shortens." Liara nodded. "We must follow one voice. Ethan, can you lead?" Ethan blinked. "Me? But I don't know this place." "That is why," Liara replied calmly. "You are not bound by our habits. You see with fresh eyes." Ethan hesitated, then took a deep breath. "All right, stay close." He began walking slowly, choosing paths by instinct. Several times bright illusions appeared, doors that led to nowhere, walls that seemed open but were solid. Each time Ethan listened to his gut and guided them past. Zira and Liara followed without question. The maze shifted again, throwing up walls of blinding light. Ethan felt doubt creep in. What if I'm wrong? What if I lead them into a trap? Sensing his hesitation, Zyra spoke softly. "We trust you, Ethan. Don't stop now." Her words gave him strength. He pressed forward, and at last the path opened into a wide exit hall. The glowing pillar stood before them, shining brighter than before. "You did it," Liara said with quiet respect. "You let us through." Ethan let out a shaky laugh. "I guess humans are good at guessing." Zyra chuckled. "Not guessing. Trusting." The first trial was complete. The second trial was called the Council Simulation. The three were led into a round chamber where holograms of different alien species appeared: tall beings of light, scaled reptilian diplomats, and floating aquatic forms. A voice announced, "You must settle a conflict between these species. If you fail, chaos will spread. Speak wisely, listen carefully, and guide them to peace." Ethan blinked at the glowing figures. "This is a test of diplomacy?" "Yes," Liara said. "Each side believes they are right. We must find common ground." The holograms began to argue loudly. The reptilian leader demanded control of a star system. The aquatic form claimed ownership of its oceans. The being of light declared it belonged to no one. Ethan felt overwhelmed. On Earth, he had never been in such debates, but he remembered something his mother once told him. When people argue, they all want to be heard first. "Wait," Ethan called out. "One at a time." The holograms paused, surprised. Ethan pointed to the reptilian leader. "You first. Tell us what you need." The reptilian spoke about resources. Ethan listened carefully, then turned to the aquatic form. "Now you." The aquatic species explained their need to protect the oceans. Finally, the being of light described its wish to remain free. Ethan thought hard. "So you all want different things. But maybe you don't need to fight. What if the reptilian people can use the land part of the system? The aquatic people care for the oceans, and the being of light is free to travel anywhere. You don't need to own everything. You can share." The holograms went silent. Then, slowly, they nodded in agreement. The chamber glowed warmly. Zyra looked at Ethan with admiration. "You solved it with fairness." Liara's eyes shone. "You listened first, then spoke. That is wisdom." The second trial was complete. The third and final trial was the challenge of creation. In a great hall, piles of strange glowing crystals and energy rods lay scattered. The council's voice echoed, "Together, you must build something that shows your unity. It must stand strong, or it will fall." Ethan looked at the materials, confused. "I've never built anything with this before." Zyra picked up a crystal. "These are energy stones. They respond to thought and touch." Liara added, "The structure must balance light and strength. We must combine our ideas." For a moment, they struggled. Zyra tried to build high towers, but they fell quickly. Liara designed elegant arches, but they lacked balance. Ethan crouched, thinking like an engineer back on Earth. "What if we combine our styles?" he suggested. "A wide base for strength, elegant arches for design, and towers for light. Together it can work." They followed his idea. Zyra shaped the glowing towers, Liara curved the arches, and Ethan built the base. Slowly, a structure rose, beautiful and balanced, glowing with harmony. When they placed the last stone, the hall filled with brilliant light. The council's voice declared, "Unity is achieved." Ethan, Zyra, and Liara stepped back, gazing at their creation. It stood tall and steady, shining like a beacon. "You see," Liara said softly, "alone we fail. Together we succeed." Ethan smiled, his chest swelling with pride. "That's something humans believe too." The 3 trials were complete. The council rose, bowing their heads. "The bond is proven. Trust, wisdom, and creation have been shown. You may now stand as one under galactic law." Ethan let out a long breath of relief. He had been afraid of failure, afraid of not belonging. But now, he had faced challenges and succeeded, not because he was perfect, but because he had trusted. listened, and worked together. That night, as the stars shone over Luthora, Ethan sat with Zira and Liara in the crystal garden. They were quiet for a long time, listening to the hum of the living planet. Finally, Ethan spoke. "I thought I was just one human lost in your laws, but now I see that maybe humans have a place here after all." Zira touched his hand gently. "You do, Ethan," Liara added, their voice calm and steady. "And this is only the beginning." The trials of trust were over, but Ethan knew the journey ahead still held new challenges and new wonders. The trials had ended, but the story was not finished. After Ethan, Zira, and Liara proved their trust and cooperation, the council announced that a great celebration must be held. On Luthora, whenever a new bond was recognized under Galactic law, the people held the Festival of Unity. It was more than a party. It was a promise to the galaxy that harmony had been achieved. Ethan woke early on the day of the festival. From his window, he saw the crystal forests decorated with glowing lanterns that floated gently in the air. Bridges shimmered with colored lights, and music carried through the valley, soft and bright. It felt magical, like the whole planet was alive and ready to celebrate. He dressed in the ceremonial robe given to him the night before. It was made of silver fabric that shifted colors as he moved, reflecting the light of the crystals. When he looked in the mirror, he hardly recognized himself. He didn't look like a stranger anymore. He looked like someone who belonged. Zira entered, wearing her own gown of deep violet that glowed with faint stars. Liara followed soon after, in flowing white robes that gave them an almost regal presence. Together, the three looked like a symbol of balance: human, Talithian partner, and heir. "Are you ready?" Zira asked gently. Ethan gave a small laugh. "As ready as I'll ever be." The three walked together to the main plaza. It was enormous, surrounded by tall crystal towers that pulsed with light in rhythm to the music. Thousands of Luthorans filled the space, their glowing eyes turned toward the trio. The air buzzed with excitement. A council member stepped forward. "Today we welcome a new bond. Zira, Liara, and Ethan stand as one under the law. To honor this, the Festival of Unity begins." The crowd erupted in cheers, their voices blending with the hum of the crystals until it sounded like the whole planet was singing. Ethan felt his heart race. He had never stood before so many, never felt so much expectation. The first event was the lighting of the harmony crystals. Large crystal pillars stood at the center of the plaza. Each of the three had to touch the pillars together to make them glow. Ethan reached out, his hand trembling slightly, and placed it on the smooth surface. Zira and Liara did the same. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the crystal, lit with golden light spreading outward until all the pillars shone brightly. The crowd cheered again, their joy filling the air. "You see?" Zira whispered. "It worked." The second event was the Dance of Unity. Groups of Talithians formed circles, moving in graceful patterns that reflected their culture. Ethan was nervous. He had never been good at dancing, even on Earth. But Zira guided him gently, and Liara moved with calm precision. The dance was not about perfection, but about harmony. Step by step, Ethan followed, stumbling once or twice but never giving up. Soon he found the rhythm, and the crowd clapped in time to the music. "Not bad for a human," Liara said with a small smile. Ethan laughed breathlessly. "I'll take that as a compliment." The third event was the Words of Unity. Each of them had to give a short speech to the gathered people. Zira spoke first, her voice steady and warm. "I chose Ethan because I saw courage in him. Today he has proven that courage many times. He is human, but more than that, he is a partner who brings hope to us all." The crowd responded with approving. Liara spoke next. "Tradition guides us, but today we learn that tradition can grow. By accepting a human into our law, we show the galaxy that unity is possible, even between the most different of species." Finally, it was Ethan's turn. His hands felt sweaty, but he took a deep breath and stepped forward. "I am Ethan from Earth. When I first came here, I was afraid. I didn't understand your customs, your laws, or your ways. But now I see that being different is not a weakness. It is a strength. Humans may be young in the galaxy, but we bring creativity, resilience, and heart. Together with Zira and Liara, I promise to do my part to keep peace, to share ideas, and to learn. That is what unity means to me. For a moment, silence filled the plaza. Then, suddenly, the entire crowd erupted in cheers. Lights flared from the crystals, rising into the sky in brilliant beams. Ethan's heart pounded with pride and relief. The speeches ended, but the celebration had only begun. Food was shared, fruits that glowed, drinks that sparkled, and dishes that released soft musical tones when touched. Children ran through the HFY plaza with glowing ribbons, while elders hummed songs that blended with the music of the crystals. Ethan tried many new foods, laughing when one crystal fruit burst into harmless sparks of light on his tongue. Zira and Liara joined him, both amused at his reactions. For the first time, Ethan felt not like a guest but like family. As the night grew deeper, the final event began. The sky display of harmony. Towers released beams of light into the air, weaving patterns across the sky. Shapes of stars, planets, and flowing rivers danced above them, shimmering in endless colors. The whole plaza fell silent, watching the beauty together. Ethan's breath caught. "It's incredible." Zira leaned close. "This display happens only when a new bond is formed. The sky celebrates with us." Liara added, "It is not just for us. It tells every being who looks up tonight that unity has been achieved." As the lights filled the sky, Ethan felt a deep sense of belonging. He thought about Earth, about how far he had come, and how humans were often seen as fragile compared to other species. But here he stood, not fragile, not out of place, part of something greater. When the celebration finally ended, Ethan, Zira, and Liara walked back together through the glowing gardens. The air was quiet now, filled only with the soft hum of the crystals. "That was unforgettable," Ethan said softly. Zira smiled. "It was our world welcoming you." Liara nodded, and it was the galaxy reminding us that humans, too, have a place in its story. Ethan looked up at the stars. His journey had begun with confusion and fear, but now he carried pride and hope. The Festival of Unity was not just a celebration, it was a promise of a new beginning. And deep in his heart, Ethan knew this was only the start of something even greater. The Festival of Unity was over, but for Ethan, Zira, and Liara, the journey was only beginning. The morning after the celebration, the council summoned them to the Hall of Stars, the most sacred chamber on Luthora. The hall was vast, its ceiling open to the sky, filled with floating lights that looked like drifting constellations. The council leader stood before them. His voice echoed through the chamber. "Yesterday the people celebrated your bond. Today we give you your duty. Unity is not only for joy, it must guide the galaxy. From this moment, you are representatives of harmony. You will travel, speak, and show others that peace is possible between different worlds." Ethan listened carefully. His heart beat faster. The words were heavy with meaning. He realized that his marriage to Zira and Liara was no longer only about personal promise. It was now a responsibility to the galaxy itself. Zira bowed with dignity. "We accept this duty." Liara placed a hand on her chest. "We will uphold it with honor." Ethan hesitated for a moment, then nodded firmly. "I may be new to this world, but I will do my best. Humanity has always survived by adapting and dreaming. I believe we can bring something good to others." The council leader's eyes glowed softly. "Then go forth, and let your journey begin." The first journey. Their first mission took them aboard a grand starship called the Radiant Wing. The ship was shaped like a soaring bird, with wings made of crystal that glowed with starlight as it traveled. Inside, the halls were smooth and bright, filled with gentle hums of energy. Ethan walked slowly through the ship, amazed by everything. "I still can't believe I'm here," he whispered. Zira smiled warmly. "You will see many worlds, Ethan. Each one will test us but also teach us, Liara added. Our duty is not only to show unity, but to learn what unity means to others. Every species has its own way of living. Their first stop was the planet Valora, a world of wide oceans and floating cities. The Valorans were tall, graceful beings with fins on their arms and soft voices like waves. At first they were cautious of Ethan. "A human?" one Valoran elder asked. "We have heard your kind are impatient and fragile." Ethan took a deep breath and smiled. "Maybe we are, but we also dream big. Sometimes our impatience makes us reach for the stars when others might wait. That is why I stand here today, far from Earth." The Valoran elder studied him for a long time. Then he gave a small nod. Perhaps there is strength in that. By the end of their visit, Ethan had swum with the Valorans in their glowing seas. Zira had shared stories of Talithian wisdom, and Liara had discussed law and fairness. The Valorans agreed to join a future Council of Unity, inspired by what they saw. Challenges ahead. Not every world welcomed them so kindly. On the planet Dravik, the people were proud and stern. They valued strength above all and saw bonds of unity as weakness. A Dravik leader pointed at Ethan. "This one does not even have scales or armor. How can such a creature represent strength?" Ethan felt a wave of doubt, but then he remembered the trials, the festival, and his promise. He stood tall. Strength is not only in the body. Humans have no claws, no wings, no glowing crystals. Yet we build, we endure, and we rise again even when we fall. That is human strength. The Draviks laughed at first, but one warrior stepped forward. "I will test this human, not with combat but with endurance." They challenged Ethan to walk across a long bridge made of sharp crystal shards. Each step hurt, but Ethan kept moving. Zyra and Liara walked beside him, their calm presence giving him courage. When they reached the other side, the Draviks were silent. Finally, the leader spoke. "Perhaps there is more to strength than we thought." Ethan's feet ached, but his heart felt proud. Once again, he proved that humans could stand among the stars. The return months passed as the trio traveled to new worlds, each one different, each one teaching them more about unity. Some species valued art, others valued silence, some even spoke only through music. In every place, Ethan learned something new, while Zyra and Liara guided him with patience. At last, they returned to Luthora. The council gathered once more, eager to hear of their journey. Zira spoke first. "We saw courage in the seas of Valora," Liara added, "and we saw pride in the mountains of Dravik." Then Ethan stepped forward. His voice was calm, but his eyes shone. "And I saw something else. I saw that every world has fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of the different. But I also saw hope. If a human like me can stand beside two Talithians as family, then maybe anyone can learn to stand together." The council listened in silence. Then slowly the hall filled with the sound of approval, the humming of the crystals echoing like a song of agreement. A new dawn that night. The three of them stood together outside, looking up at the stars. The crystal forests glowed softly, as if listening to their thoughts. Zyra touched Ethan's hand. "When I first chose you, I did not know how far we would go. Now I see it was not chance. It was destiny." Liara nodded gently. "Our bond is not just between us, it is a bridge for the galaxy." Ethan looked up at the endless sky. "Back on Earth, people used to look at the stars and wonder if we were alone. Now I know we're not. And more than that, we're needed. Yo-ai." Three stood quietly for a moment, the universe stretching above them like an endless promise. A new chapter had begun, not just for Ethan, Zira, and Liara, but for the galaxy itself. And as the stars shone brighter that night, it seemed the universe itself whispered a message. "Human, you're not just married to me. You are married to the future."